Thank you very much. Just to clarify, I know you can't believe 32 years, but that's in the industry of research industry, not in the wine and spirits industry, and not in India and Sri Lanka, unfortunately. But I am responsible for them now, and have been for the last 4 years or so. Now, I've got quite a bit to get through, and not much time. I'm here. Thank you to the organisers for inviting me, and my colleague, Stephen. Steve Turner. He's our commercial director based in Asia Pacific. And just to say that India is one of the IWSR's 3 strategic pillars. We offer a range of services in India currently that is only matched in the US. So we're already investing a lot of time and effort, and hopefully more, in India, because we recognise, as the previous speakers did, no worries, as the previous speakers did, that this is a really coming market. It's a big part of the future of this industry globally. Now, I've got to get my specs on now. Okay, so, showing. This is the this is the context of the presentation. This is what I'll be talking about. So we're going to put a little bit of flesh on the bones, really, of where India sits in the global picture. And then we're going to look at some trends, and actually this will pick up quite a bit on some of the things that Sukhinder was saying. Those are the 3 or 4 main trends that I've got some information on from our qualitative studies. And then it's a quick look at the outlook and some key takeaways. So without further ado, now this is a slide. Boom, boom, boom. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah, shall I start singing, just to be sure? No? Right. Okay. So don't get too hung up on the numbers here. Me, not them, don't worry. Anything electronic goes wrong when it's in my hands. The wife changes the light bulbs at home. Ready? Okay. So don't get too hung up on the numbers here. This is really to illustrate the scale of India's actual recovery. This is 21-22. It's more a recovery. Obviously, there are elements of growth as well, but it's a significant amount of recovery. So the volume's on the left, the value's on the right. The value is higher than the volume, so that helps to kind of reinforce this premiumisation story as well. And in the top corner of each of those 2 charts, we've got a little global number. And you can see that where India is pretty much double digits for every criterion, every category, the global picture is somewhat less effusive. We've got 3 slides coming up here, one on spirits, one on beer, one on wine, that once again places India in the context. So this is about volume change in the top 20 markets. So the scale of the bar is the scale of the volume change, and the position of the little dot is the forecast growth rate. So what we're saying here is that in the period 21-22, India grew like the 5th largest market growth in volume terms, and the expectation to 2027 is that it will be one of the better performing. You can see over here China's going to perform quite well, around about 5-6% CAGR. It's about 4 or 5 in India. This, as you can tell from the fact that the volume's down, is a recovery. This is continued growth. Just to say quickly on spirits, beg your pardon, India is the #1 market in the world for whiskey, for brandy, for rum, in terms of absolute volumes. It's number 6 for vodka, behind 4 Eastern European markets in the US. It's about number 11 for beer. It comes quite a lot lower down in wine, but it's becoming amongst one of the larger producer nations. So here we go again. Oh, did you have beer? Sorry. Yeah. So this is that slide we previously saw for beer, and you can see that the volume growth 2021 for beer dwarfs anything else. But this is a recovery. There were 2 years of recovery for beer because of the timings of the lockdowns. And I have a rather modest forecast, as you can see, again about 4 or 5%. but it's the #1 market in this period for growth. And we'll get a similar picture when we go to still wine. It's #2 behind Thailand in terms of the absolute volume growth. And again, we've got a pretty modest, I think these forecasts can certainly be beaten. We've got a pretty modest forecast, again, about 5–6% CAGR to 2027. But what we've said across those 3 slides, India is in the top 5, even the top 2, for pretty much every category going forward and in present performance. Unsurprising, perhaps. Now, this is quite a busy slide, and I'll explain a little bit by bit. But what I did here was I wanted to kind of find out how many actual consumers of alcohol there are in India. I mean, obviously, you look at the big numbers, and then you kind of try to work out, and that's how you calculate per capita. But it doesn't tell you the full story. So on the left there, as you look at it, this is sourced to the National Family Health Survey 2021. So this is per state, the percentage of individuals over the age of 15 who drink alcohol. So this is obviously a questionnaire response. The colours of the different states tell you high, medium, low. But I did the calculation based on a 2022 population of India, state by state. And we get to a situation where 15 plus population, this table here, is about 900 million, 460 men, 440 women. It splits, the drinking population is about 21% of possible male drinkers drink. That's about just under 100 million. For women, it's a fraction over 1%. That's 5 million. So out of that total population of 900 million that could drink, only around 100 and 105 do drink. So increasing that penetration is going to be a big part of increasing the size of the market. There are a number of things that can be done, obviously, very responsibly to do that. Retailing is a big part of it. I'll touch on that later. And then some of the other interesting things, that numbers that you kind of generate, if you like, or discover, that really reinforce the opportunity, certainly for the next decade and more. If we look at the middle class, this is defined as households between about $6,500 and $40,000 a year. Between 2016 and 21, apparently about 83 million citizens of India were added to the middle classes based on that income criterion. It's forecast that in the decade between 21 and 31, 283, so another 200 million middle class individuals, mainly metro. This is obviously very important because these are guys with disposable income, guys and girls with disposable income. I found this astounding. Obviously, the working age population is key to the sort of buoyancy of the consumer markets. In 2010, there were about 790 million Indian working age population consumers. There will be more than 1.1 billion by 2050. In China, the gap, 180 more, 970, that's coming down. That's going to be 790 by 2050. Now that's a really massive change that betokens a lot of good news for every category, not just the alcohol bev category, every category in India. If you look at the median age, it goes from 26 to 37 in the 40 years roughly between 2012 and 2050. So these are individuals in the prime of their life, experimental, and they've got the money. Massive market opportunity. Yeah? I can even influence from afar. I didn't touch on this. Oh, there we go. Right, so this is a bit of a busy slide. I'll try and simplify it for you. So what you've seen so far is largely from our country reports, the India country report, that kind of quantitative cycle. We do 160 a year. We also do, and this is part of the additional services that we cover in India, we offer both a bev tracker and a consumer tracker. So we have qualitative studies available to all, obviously for a price, that track, and this is the third iteration of this, that track lots of different attitudinal behaviours. Now this one is by generation split, Gen Z, Millennials, Gen X and Boomers. I learnt the other day that fortunately I'm actually by 1 year in Gen X. I'm not a Boomer, thank God for that. And then we've got the various categories across here. Now where I put it red, that is kind of under average consumption. So what we can basically see here is that Gen Z are under average consumers of Indian whiskey and Scotch whiskey. So that's not going to massively affect the composition of the market immediately, but over time there will be not necessarily a lessening of demand for whiskey, but certainly an increase in demand for other categories. If you look at the millennials line, that colour blue tells you that it's higher than average amongst Indian drinkers. So pretty much every category is reliant on the consumer behaviour of millennials. Millennials are driving this. Now, what's interesting about that is, given the previous slide about population, is that when Gen Z get to the age of millennials, they may well behave in similar ways. You can also see that Gen X and Boomers are the real drivers, the stalwarts, the mainstays, if you like, of Scotch whisky and Indian whisky consumption, but they're less experimental with the other categories. Perhaps wine is slightly unexpected that they wouldn't be as big drinkers as wine, but certainly for Boomers, they don't drink much apart from gin. They're less experimental apart from gin. And then the other thing that feeds into one of the things I think that Sukhinder and AD were saying, fresh cocktails. Above average consumption of fresh cocktails amongst younger consumers, whereas it's below average for older consumers. So that's a real trend, something to be mindful of. This survey includes a lot more interesting stuff. I couldn't go through all of it, but I picked out a few little trends. Another one's on no and low alcohol. So there are 3 parameters here, 3 questions that one looks at. The first is brand loyalty, going from loyal on the left to like to discover on the right, so experimental basically. Let's deal with that one first. So in the orange rectangle, that's the India numbers, and in the blue triangle, that's the China numbers. Now, the dark blue is Boomers, and we can see that they're more loyal. Even though it's a minus number, that means they're more loyal. So both for China and India, Boomers are loyal consumers. And then everybody else, every other generation, is to a greater or lesser degree more experimental. And the interesting one, the interesting difference, if you look between China and India, is actually millennials. So that kind of mid-royal blue. For China, it's 3. So it's pretty much on the average, decent enough split. It's the same for millennials and Generation Z, 26. So that's the kind of net balance. So in other words, millennials are experimental, much more experimental than other generations. Then we look at local versus imported. Local on the left, imported on the right. Now you can see here that everything amongst Chinese consumers strays towards the local, whereas everything amongst Indian consumers strays towards the imported. And there are a number of reasons for that. One is the composition of the market. In China, a lot of it is local brands, and it's local rice-based wines, grape-based wines, baijiu, etc. Whereas India is a market that already has an international aspect. You make Indian-made foreign liquor. Those are the biggest categories. You don't have to convert consumers to whiskey, to gin, to rum, to brandy. They already drink. You just take them up from the cheaper products to the more expensive products. This doesn't mean that local consumers don't have an affinity with local brands. In India, they do. But equally, they like to discover imported brands. And increasingly, they're recognizing that where 20 years ago, Indian brands might be, it'll have to do, they're now more than good enough. That's the key difference, the key distinction, the key evolution. And then the last one, which is quite interesting, is about going out, less, more. And you can see there, the big sort of news, if you like, is that boomers are much less inclined to go out now than perhaps they were before, but certainly less so than younger generations. So the at-home consumption, which is a real feature of lockdowns, is kind of concentrated in the hands of the boomer generation. In China, everybody wants to get out if they can. Maybe they can't. And then we've got a slide on NOLO. Now, I won't go through this piece by piece, but we've got 5 countries here as well as a global average. The 5 countries are the US, the UK, Germany, China, India. The 3 questions are, I'm more interested in moderating, I'm more interested in no alcohol, I'm more interested in low alcohol. The key thing here, and this probably feeds back into some of the observations we made about population and women in the population, in the drinking population. The key thing here is that by far, Indians are the most interested in these types of products. They have more interest in this in moderation, in no and low alcohol. Now, I think that means there is a big opportunity. Again, feeding into what Sukhinder observed. I think the key aspect is going to be price. The price thing is absolutely key because you are not necessarily competing with a no alcohol product against 5% beer. You're competing against Coke, Pepsi on price. And if it's a de-alkalized product, the COGS are probably going to be higher than for the alkalized product. So that's kind of a circle to square to take advantage of this opportunity. So, a couple more slides. This is a replica, if you like, of the opening slide. And this tells you what I think about the future of India. And again, ahead of the global curve, but as you can see, decidedly more modest. I think this will be, I'm very hopeful that this will be beaten. These performances will be beaten going forward. Every hope, particularly in terms of value as premiumization comes in. So the key takeaways are just a quick summary. We saw that demographics are very important. In fact, I think they're your key asset. I'm talking about the Indian market, but also the Indian diaspora and the international opportunities. We mentioned the fact that it's already an internationally composed market. It's already got those categories that international companies launch into, and so do your local players. Moderation, we've just touched on that, very important, particularly beyond beer. Again, picking up, it's almost as though Sukhinder and I compared presentations really, because thankfully he had said similar things to me, which is good, or rather I said similar things to him. The innovation and entrepreneurship within the Indian psyche, that's going to really help push things, not just lockdown babies, but new products, new ideas, regional, local, etc. Retailing, very important, particularly for female consumers. It used to be a horrible experience going to buy a bottle of whiskey. Let's eat any kind of alcohol, stand in a queue for 2 hours, get to the front of the queue, it's a shack and a grill. Now, in a lot of places, metro, it's almost like a global travel retail experience. Bit of music, lovely shop, lighting, trial, etc., etc. That type of thing is going to pull in more consumers. And then touching on the internet side of things, I don't necessarily think e-commerce is going to take off very, very soon because of the bureaucratic elements, but actually it already exists. It's called quick commerce. You guys phone up the local retailer, the local liquor shop, and you get somebody to come and deliver on a bike within 10 minutes. Why do you need e-commerce? Why do you need a website to do that if you can just make a phone call? So thank you very much indeed for your time. Hopefully there were a couple of bits and bobs in there that were useful. This is a QR code for an ebook. So either take a picture of that now. Steve and I both got one on our phones. We can share it with you. Come and have a chat. No problem. Look forward to it. Thank you.